Welcome to the final video in our grade 12 RT Prac exam or paper 1 series for the November 2023 Prac exam, and we are covering the last and final question in this video. Reminder to look in the video description for a link to the data files, as well as to jump to different parts in this video to go to the different questions, as well as to find the links to the other videos for the other questions. So let's get stuck into the final question, which tends to be an array question and tends to be quite complicated, but we can do it. So let's get into it. So here we're at the last question. It tends to be quite complicated with problem solving skills. It tends to involve arrays, and it tends to also involve nested loops. So the key thing with this question is to remember that because it's the last question, people tend to do it last, and because of that, they tend to run out of time when it comes to this last question. So just imagine that we're doing this question and there's not a lot of time left and we want to get as many marks as possible. So first thing, assume none of the code's going to work. Just get the marks. And so by just trying to get as many marks as we can in those last few minutes, you can try and maximize as many marks for this last question. So know all your basics for your arrays, and when it comes to nested loops, get the inner loop working first. You'll get most of the marks that way. We can always sort out the outer loop later. So let's get stuck into 4.1. They give us a graphical user interface and there are two tabs, so we can do 4.1 and 4.2. So let's go look at 4.1. So we've got an array of strings, and they look like this. They're a whole bunch of codes, and they contain letters, digits, and special characters. Special character refers to a character that is not a letter or a digit. So special characters, they're referring to things that are not letters and not digits and not numbers. So let's go look at the first button. For 4.1, write code to remove the special characters from each code in the array to create a new code. Count how many special characters were removed for each code, and then add the new code and the number of the special letters from it to the list box. So we're going to display the new code. As you can see, if you look over here, there's the code, and if we remove the special letters, we will display the new variation of that code, and then in brackets we say, hey, we removed 3 things. And they want us to do it for all the strings in the array codes. Now, because we're going to be probably looping through this string, trying to work out everything, I'm just going to work with the first one in the array codes. And once I got that working, then I'll do a loop that goes from 1 to 5 that does it for all 5 of those codes. So that's probably the way that I would go about doing it. So let's get stuck into it. 12 marks, we can do it. So here we are at the code, and there's the button that we want to click on. So, and there's the list box that we want to display all of our new codes and how many corrections were made. So let's double click on this button over here, and there we are at the code. So let's just double check here. Here we've got our array codes, and that's what we are looking at. So I'm just going to copy that for now, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work with the first one. So let's just make an sline variable of type string, and I just want to get this one working. So sline is going to equal to whatever is in array codes at position 1. It's basically going to look like that. So let's just get this one working, display it, and we'll go from there. So we basically want to go through this entire string and remove anything that's not a letter and not a digit. So those are the things that we are looking for. We're going to compile a new string. So I'm going to call this snew, and we need to loop through each and every letter in the string. So we're going to need a variable called r for our loop, which will make an integer. So we can just do that. I'm going to go and say snew is equal to the null string. So this is going to end up being my new string that we compose. We're going to look, is that one of the legal letters? If it is, we're going to add it onto snew. Is that legal? Add it on, and that's what we're going to keep doing. So we're going to loop from I equals from 1 until the length of sline. And we're going to do the following. Let's put a begin end here. And we're going to start off by asking, we want to check each individual character of sline. So sline, how do we check each individual character? Well, that's square bracket I. So that's how we refer to each individual character, because I will be a 1. So we're looking at the first character, then I will become a 2, and so on. So that's how we refer to each character. We want to check if this character is a letter or a digit. So for that long list, we're going to use our in, and then in our set, we're going to list all the possible options. So we want a capital A to a capital Z. So all capital letters are valid letters. We also want a small letter a, because you can see that even small letters are fine. Small letter a to a small letter Z. That means all small letters are valid. And we want all digits. So that's the digit 0 as a string. So you put it in single quotes, up until 9. So any one of those characters, A's to Z's in capitals, A to Z small letters, or noughts to 9s, anything in that list of options is a valid option. If that's true, in other words, if that A, that first letter in S-line is in that list, we have a legal option. And if that's true, I'm going to put a begin end here, we're going to say S new is equal to whatever is in S new plus this S-line R. So that we can take that letter A and we're going to add it onto S new, which in the beginning had nothing. Then we're going to check the N, because R will become a 2. Is N a legal letter? Yes, it is. It'll take that N and add it onto that A that's currently there, put that into S new. Then it's going to do 7, J. When it gets to that star is not in the list, so it will not do this. So it'll skip it and then come back here and so on. So that's going to create my new string. And then at the end over here, once this loop is done, S new should be our new string. So we're going to add it to the list box. So we're going to take the list box over here. I think it's lstq41.items.add. So it's like a member control, but it's .items, not lines. And we're going to add this S new. So let's just test this to see that it's actually creating the new string. And we want the new string to change to that. Okay, so you'll notice that there are 3 special characters that are removed. So let's go run and check that out. So when I click on the button, there we go. You can see our value is there. It's correct. There's no special characters, and that is correct. Now, the only thing that they wanted else was to say the number of characters that were deleted must be in brackets at the end. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a Dracula variable, or our count, because it's count Dracula. And every time we initialize S new, we're also going to initialize our count to 0. And every time we find a character that's valid, we're going to add on. But if we don't, if we don't find a valid character, then we obviously are not adding it. But then what we are going to do is we're going to increase our count. So that will tell me how many characters will not be doing this adding on, which means we skipped it, which is the special character. And then when we add S new, we're also going to add, if you add here, a bracket, and then we're going to add our count, and then we're going to add the closing brackets. But just remember, our count is an integer, and this items.add needs to be a whole string. Well, that's a string, that's a string, that's a string, but this is not. So it's converted from what it is, an int, to a string. So that's how we construct the S new, which is the new constructed code, and then how many characters we did not include were in brackets. So let's try that. So there we go, it's correct. So we've got the first one working. We know that it works. Now this is the key to having inner loops and outer loops. Everything works. So now all I need to do is do all of this again 5 times, because there are 5 codes in the array. So we're going to go from 1 to 5. So all I'm going to do is create an outer loop. So we've got R as our inner loop. Let's make a J as our outer loop, and we're going to do everything. So all of this code here up until the display needs to be inside of the outer loop. Above here we're going to make a for j is equal to 1 to 5, and we're going to say begin over here, and then at the bottom after this we will put an end. So this is the end of the outer J loop. So that's going to repeat that process 5 times. Now it's still not 100%, but we're very close. So we'll get marks for that part as well. So it just does that first one 5 times. But now instead of doing array codes 1 every time, we want to do array codes 1 and then array codes 2. So all I need to do is change that to whatever's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 up until 5. So I'll change it to a J. So S line will become the first value in the array. Then once that loop's done, it'll become the second value in the array, and do that for that. Let's test that. And there we go. If I look at the results, there you can see it's perfect. 3 4 4 3 3 3 4 4 3 3. It looks perfect. So there we go. We've done it correctly. So remember, the trick with nested loops, get the inner one working for the first case. As you can see, that's probably most of the marks. Then there'll be a mark for the outer loop, which you just do everything that you just did for the inner loop. You just do it inside of the outer loop. And then there's normally one little mark to make the 2 loops work together. And that was all we had to do there to make them work together. So that is question 4.1. Let's move on to the next question. So 4.2, school timetable has 5 days and 7 periods, and it's been provided with the following declaration. So we've got the days and the timetable and the subject codes. So there's IT, and I would assume that is home language, accounting, that's physical science, math, I would assume. And code has been provided for us. So there's already code that populates the array timetable by placing the 5 subjects randomly in the array. So keyword here is randomly. So our results might not look like theirs. So it's going to appear in once per day for the 5 days. There will be 2 free periods each day, and there's also a display display the 7 periods for each of the 5 days. So if I look over here, this is what it's going to look like. Obviously the order of them might be different because this is all going to be random. So this is done for us. So you can see Monday to Friday there's 7 periods, and each subject has 1 slot in the 1 to 7 period, and there are 2 open slots every day. 4.2.1, the school principal decided to add 4 extra periods once per day from Monday to Thursday, so not Friday, for the subject code RT in the timetable. The extra RT periods will be placed in the array timetable from Monday at the first available period using the RT code. So if you look here, do you see the first available period is period 3? So we want that to change to RT. And if you look here, you see they put RT there. On Tuesday, you can see the first available period is there. So they put an RT. On Wednesday, it's a 2. So wherever you find the first gap, that's where you're going to put the RT. So the extra RT period must be placed. Example of output is this. So we want to actually do this to the array timetable. We want to change that array timetable. By default, there will be 6 free periods available on the timetable after all the subjects have been placed, including the extra RT periods. Due to the random placement, our output will look different. So let's go try it out. So we're going to come over here to the second tab. We're going to come on to extra periods. And I think that is the function that does the displaying of the array. If I scroll up here, there is array timetable. So we're just going to believe that it's got values. If I run it, you can see here that we have those values. Now ours look different to the actual program, but that's because these are random. So we would want to have put something there. We would want to have put something there. So we just need to change the array timetable and it will do the rest. So let's just do 1 day. Let's just get 1 day working. So we're going to go from 1 to 7 and we want to look for the first gap. Or actually, we don't want to go to 1 to 7. We want to go until we find that first gap. We know there's going to be a gap every day. So we don't need to worry about that. So we are going to do the following. So we need to loop. So let's use a while loop, for example. We're going to loop through this array. So because we've got a while loop, we don't have a looping variable, and we want to basically loop from 1 until 7 because we're just doing 1 day. Remember, we're just doing 1 day. So I'm going to go and do a variable called periods so that I know that it's the periods. And periods we will initialize this to a 0. And while this is happening, we're going to start off by increasing our periods, which will deal with period 1 and then 2 and 3 and so on. Also going to make a b found variable. So this is going to be a Boolean value that's going to be true when we find the first open space, just so that we know what we're doing. So when we find the first open space, this will become true. So we're going to start it off by be found being false. So we're going to initialize it to false. And while it is false, we must keep doing this loop. The moment this becomes true, that means we found the first position, we can stop. So we're going to increase the period. So it's going to become a 1. So I'm going to ask the question, if the value in the array, we're looking at the different periods, right? So we're just looking at the first day. So I'm going to say if array timetable at position 1, because we're only doing the first day, but at the periods value. So this is the value that's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're looking at period 1. If period 1 for day 1 is equal to an empty space, which I think will just be a blank like that. If it's equal to that, then we have found a gap. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change this value to the value of RT, and then we're going to set my be found to true, so that when the loop comes here, it'll go, hey, it's true, so we can stop the loop and we can go out. So let's just try that. So that's only working for the first day. So the first day, it's going to go, assume we haven't found it, start with period 0, and we haven't found anything. So we're going to go, okay, period 1 increases our periods. It's going to be period 1. Is period 1 of day 1 a gap? If not, then do nothing. Then it's going to move up here to period 2. Period 2, no, and period 3, no. Period 4, maybe if period 4 is the blank, then change it to RT, and then say, hey, we found it, and then the loop will then technically stop, and then we kill display. Let's see if that works. Remember, that only works for day 1. So as we can see, there's a gap here right in period 1. We're going to say extra RT periods. There it found the period, and there it worked correctly. So now we just want to repeat this whole process for 5 days. So I'm going to go and make a variable called days, and we want to actually not for 5 days. Remember, if you remember correctly, they said this only happens for Monday to Thursday. So it's only from 1 to 4. So we're going to put a loop over here. So all of this is going to go inside of my outer loop. So all of this will be a for loop. By the way, just a reminder, the reason why I did a while loop is because when I found the gap, I want to stop looking. So when I found the gap, stop looking, and then we don't need to carry on to the end. That's why I use the while loop. So we're going to use a for loop here because we want to do this 4 times. For the days equals 1 to 4, and we're going to put a begin in here, and at the end of this we're going to put end. This is the end of days outer loop. So that's going to do that process 4 times, but it's going to do the 4 times for each and every day 1. But we don't want to do for each and every day 1. We're going to do day 1, then day 2. So now we just change that to whatever that's going to be, because we start with day 1 and it does this whole process. And then once it's done, it'll come here day 2 and do this whole process for day 2, period 1, day 2, period 1, and so on. So let's try that now. So we've got our period, so that, and that should become RT. Click, boom, there we go. They all became RT. So there we go. It worked. So that's great. So there's no extra one on Friday because obviously we didn't do one for Friday. So that is correct. Let's move on to 4.2.2. So 4.2.2, the RT teacher requests to have both RT periods placed consecutively, one after each other, from Monday to Thursday. Again, we're not dealing with anything to do with Friday. Write code to the following. Rearrange the periods on each day to replace the 2 RT periods one after each other. The first RT period for the day must remain where it is, and the second one must be moved to where that one is. So if I look over here, maybe, so we want that one to move, for example, there. That's going to swap with math. So we just basically going through, finding the first value and then taking the second one to the next value. So I'm going to show you this example here quick. I'm taking Tuesday, which is just one day. And so this is the layout that they gave in the examples. I want you to look at the following. So the first position of the first RT is position 1. So we're going to find the first position of the first RT, because that's important, because once we know where the first RT is, we then know where the second RT must go. It must go into position 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. So whatever this value is, we'll make that into red. That 1 that we got there, add 1 onto it, and that's the position of the second RT. Then we must go find the position of the second RT, which in this case is a 4. Once we've got 4 and 2, what we are going to do then is we're going to then swap. So math will come out of that block, RT will go into that block, and math will go into that one. So that's basically what we want to do. We want to swap those 2 values. That's a simple swap algorithm. If you remember your sorting array, you'll remember how to do a swap. So that's the basic gist of what we want to do. So we want to find the first value of RT. We then add 1 to find the value where the second RT must go, and we must find the second RT and then do a swap between them. Very complicated to do for multiple days, but so let's just get one day working. And I'm not actually going to do Monday. I'm going to actually start with Tuesday, and the reason for that is because Monday it's already sorted. It's got one after each other. Let's try to get Tuesday working and see if we can get that 4 to come to here and math to go there. If we can get that working for Tuesday, we can repeat that for all days Monday to Thursday. So double click on the button. We're going to start off with trying to work with just the day 2. So we want to go through the array and find the first position of the RT and the second position of the RT. Okay, so that's the first thing. Once we have those 2 numbers, we can do the swap. I need to loop through. So I'm going to have R periods as my looping variable of type integer. I need to record the first RT. First RT, and then I want to get the second RT, and I want the next. So that's our next. That's going to be the position after the first RT. So that's what I want to do for that. So let's do that. So let's loop. We're going to loop for R periods. It's going to go from 1 to 7. And we need to find the first RT. So if array timetable. Now remember, array timetable, it's first the days and then the period. So we're looking at day 2 because we're dealing with Tuesday, and we're looking at period 1, then period 2, then period 3. So if that period equals to RT, then we want to record it. Then we want to say that our first RT is equal to this period that we are at. That's why we're going to assign it that value. But how do we know it's the first one? Well, how about we give first RT almost like a default value. So I'm going to say our first RT is equal to 0. So at the moment it's a 0. We know we haven't allocated a value to it. So therefore, if the array timetable is an RT, and at the same time first RT is equal to 0, then we haven't allocated a value to that. So remember, let's put it in brackets whenever you got an and. So if we find the letter RT and our first RT hasn't been allocated a number that's not 0, then we record it. So that's the first thing. Therefore, once we've got that first value, then we know that the next value will be whatever our first is plus 1. So if we record position 2, we're going to go to 2 plus 1, so that's going to be in position 3. So that's where we want the next RT to go, but we don't know if it's there. So then it's going to loop again to number 2 and 3. Let's do this again. We're going to do all of this again. So if I find an RT again, but this is tricky because we would have changed first RT over here. If I ask if it's not equal to 0, I could say, well, if it's not equal to 0, the problem is we've just changed it there. So once we change it at the first place, it comes here, it's going to be changed. So I could maybe put an else there. That could work because we are either finding the first RT, else we are finding the second one. So it will never get to this point if it's doing that part. So that means if we haven't done this, if we do this loop again and it's not equal to 0, that means we're here. That means we found the second RT position. So I'm going to put a begin end here. And so we have found our second RT, and that's going to be whatever our periods is. We call it sec RT. There we go. So that's the variable. So we found our second RT. And remember, the else, we don't have a semicolon before that. And just remember, not equal to is shine bright like a diamond. That's the not equal to symbol. We go through periods 1 to 7. If period 1 is an RT there and we haven't found it because we haven't found it, then we set the first ID to a period and the next value will be 1 plus it. But let's go. Let's say it's not there. Let's say it's not 2. It's 3. Let's say 3 is the first RT. We record position 3. We come here. No, it's not that because we did that there and we come out. Yeah. So now we go position 4. That's not RT. Position 5. No. Position 6. 6 is RT, but we've already allocated a value to first RT. So it'll jump to this part. It is RT and we've allocated a value to first RT already. So that means this must be the second value. And so once we've done that, then I can come here. So now I've got the value at that position must swap with the value at that position. And that normally uses a temp variable. So I'm going to make an stemp string, if you remember correctly. So we're going to get here to the end of the loop. So at the end of this loop, we will now know that that is where the second RT is. That's where we want it to go. So I'm going to say stemp is equal to one of them. So array timetable. Remember, we're dealing with day 2 only, and I'm looking at that one. So I'm going to store that one, sec RT, and then we're going to replace this one's value with whatever is at the one at next. And then we're going to replace the one at the next to be whatever the value is at stemp. So that is your swap algorithm. So we have a temp variable that stores the one at the second position. Then we change the second position to the next, and we change the next to what was originally at the second position. And there we display. So let's test that. It should only work for day 2. So let's run it. Now remember, we can't do a swap now because there's only one RT period. We first have to do this button and allocate new periods. If we look at Tuesday, so there's RT there. We want the RT to move to position 2 and home language to move there. If I do that, you see that swap? There we go. It did work. So now we just want to do that whole process for the first 4 days because remember, there's no 2 RTs in Friday. All we're going to do is do this whole loop again. So this is my inner loop right up until here. And we want all of that to happen 4 times. So that's going to be for the number of days. So we're going to make it our days variable, and we're going to loop for our days. It's going to loop from 1 to 4 because we're only doing the first 4 days. So we're going to put a begin end here. And then to make it work, we're going to look, whenever we refer to one particular day, we're now going to refer to the days variable. So yeah, for example, we refer to Tuesday every single time, but now I want to refer to day 1 and then day 2 and then day 3 and then day 4. And then same over here, we're referring to day 1, then 2, and then if I come down here, there's quite a few places where I must replace it. So I'm just going to change those all quickly, and then it should technically work. So let's try it. So let's do the extra period. So those 2 are fine. RT must come here to home language. Home language is going to go to period 6. That's still fine. And then period 3 on Tuesday must swap with period 5. So let's see if it works. So there we go. So the math and the RT worked. The RT and the home language worked. And all these ones stayed the same, if I remember correctly. So that seems to work for it. There we go. So remember, there was quite a few questions regarding nested loops. Get the inner loop working first for one case. You'll find that is most of the marks. Then you do your outer loop around all of that work that you just did for the inner loop, and then you do whatever you need to do to make 2 loops work together. And that's how you can do your nested loops. So there we go. The question's done. Hopefully you were able to do it. And now let's try another example. Go check out the playlist if you need more practice. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button to support the channel, as well as follow us at Mr. Long Education on TikTok and Mr. Long Computer Terms for some theory help. And remember to check our playlist tab if you need some more examples to help you. And remember, don't do the long way, do the Mr. Long way.